A U.S. federal appeals court throws up a major roadblock against President Donald Trump's travel ban, dealing a blow to his sweeping immigration agenda. Will the Supreme Court have the final say? Fights break out in the South African parliament as the opposition shouts down President Jacob Zuma during his State of the Nation address. And how technology is transforming household cleaning and nanny services in Kenya. Yes, there is now an app for that. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now, throughout this week on Africa 54, we have given you an unprecedented inside look at the brutality of the Boko Haram terrorist group. The turmoil caused by the insurgency of the extremist militants have amplified northeast Nigeria's food insecurity. As VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young reports, the Nigerian government and non-governmental organizations are struggling to address the desperate needs faced by the people in parts of the nation.
Northeast Nigeria is not an easy place to grow food. Under normal conditions, with sparse rainfall, crops struggle to survive. In Nigeria's Borno State and surrounding areas, Adamawa and Yobe, the number of empty stomachs and the deaths malnutrition and starvation cause grow by the day. Especially hard hit are infants and children. The severity of the crisis in northeastern Nigeria is explained via Skype from Dakar, Senegal, by UN World Food Program official Andre Vornik.
What we do know is that about 500,000 children in this area are malnourished or severely malnourished. It's very difficult to say whether a certain number of people or children have starved to death.
The everyday food gathering challenges faced by northeastern Nigerians have been made even worse in recent years by the insurgency of Boko Haram and the group's conflict with Nigerian government forces. The fighting since 2009 has caused, according to the World Food Program, an estimated 1.8 million internally displaced persons, or IDPs, primarily in Borno State. The WFP says some 4.6 million people in northeastern Nigeria now have food insecurity. Nigeria's Ministry of Health has launched an emergency response program to try to get food and medical assistance into northeastern Nigeria. But as with the non-governmental organizations, going into this Boko Haram-torn region can be risky, and that hampers efforts to reach starving people. That point is echoed via Skype from Dakar by the head of NGO International Rescue Committee's mobile health clinics in Mataguri, Borno State, Aisha Liman.
It's definitely very difficult, okay? You're talking about a situation where you're afraid of going to work because you don't know what is out there, you know? Everybody's life is at risk.
Because of these dangers and the remoteness of parts of northeastern Nigeria, relief agencies have resorted to delivering food and medical help by air, as the World Food Program's Andre Vornik explains via Skype.
These are areas that are too dangerous to if you like, to set up shop in on a sustained basis. So what we do is that we fly our security people in and our technical people in with some food and medical supplies. At the same time, they assess the situation. Then if the area is secure, reasonably secure, we send food and other supplies in by road.
The World Food Program says that by the end of December 2016, nearly 800,000 people in Nigeria had been given food, with nearly 200,000 starving children fed a high-calorie, high-protein, peanut-based supplement to address malnutrition. The WFP says that its 2017 goal is to feed some 1.8 million people a month. Despite these concerted efforts by both the Nigerian government and NGOs, there are still many hungry, desperate people in northeastern Nigeria who, for various reasons, aren't receiving aid. And for some of them, the time needed to save them is running out. The situation for infants and children younger than age 5 is so dire that, according to a recent article in the New York Times newspaper, another aid group, Médecins Sans Frontières, says that people that age aren't being seen much anymore, suggesting that a number of those children may have already died. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Well, there was drama and chaos in the South African Parliament on Thursday. In an unprecedented move, armed soldiers were deployed during President Jacob Zuma's State of the Nation speech. On Friday, South Africa's opposition Democratic Alliance said it is seeking a court ruling on what it calls an unconstitutional militarization of Parliament. The president's address was delayed by more than an hour before the mayhem erupted as far-left lawmakers brawled with officials after interrupting the speech as the main opposition party walked out. Zuma had authorized more than 400 soldiers to join the security team of the parliament building during the speech. His opponents described the move as a militarization of parliament. South Africans are expressing mixed reactions on Friday.
I was angry, I was disappointed, and I did not expect something like that in the democracy that we are claiming to be having currently. The reason being, it looks like now we have turned into the state, the army nation, because we defend the things that were not supposed to have been defended.
Jacob Zuma, everybody have a lot of things. I like him because he have a mindset. But he mustn't make promises he can't keep. And the people behind him must stand up with him. Because he needs everybody put in pieces in the future for all of us.
I'm quite unhappy for everything what happened in Parliament. It was quite disrespectful. And I don't still have many things to say, but I'm happy for Zuma too, man.
With the chaos, I expected it. It happened last year, it's going to happen again next year. As far as the promises he makes, we're still waiting for him to fulfill them.
Well, previous speeches in Parliament by Zuma have also led to disruption. But Thursday's address, in which he said the government would push for a greater role for blacks in the economy, was the most violent, with the scuffles spilling over into the precinct of the building. Now, as he settles in as Gambia's new president, Adama Barrow must come to terms with the reality of the task ahead. Following Barrow's victory, the mood in the country was that of excitement and relief as Gambian citizens had fought long and hard to rid the country of the tyranny and dictatorship of former President Yahya Jammeh. Lamin Jahateh tells us what lies ahead for the small West African nation.
In the process of fighting out Jammeh, the small West African nation became more divided along tribal lines than ever before, thanks to the former president's tribal rhetoric. Dr. Ismail Assise is a political analyst and a lecturer at the University of the Gambia. He said the government has a monumental social task to unite the country.
One of the key challenges is to unite the nation. I've always been emphasizing that the nation, Gambian nation, has never, ever before been so divided along both political and tribal lines.
Aside from uniting the country, President Barrow will also have a challenge of maintaining unity within his coalition government. He led a coalition of 8 political parties that are united only by the common desire to unseat the dictator. Now that Jammeh is gone, the task is maintaining unity among the coalition of different personalities and worldview.
Let's look at the history of the coalition. They've been in opposition. They've been fierce rivals for the past 20 to 30 years. And it's been very difficult, in fact, to get them under one roof, let alone having them contest under one candidate. But now when they achieved that, was a very successful achievement. But then now, we have to understand also that the coalition, according to the MOU, that they are going to rule for 3 years. After that, there'll be election. But they all have at the back of their mind that after that 3 years, they'll all go their separate ways. None of them have political ambitions to run the country again. That makes the coalition very, very fragile.
After that, the government has the task of maintaining the high and wide collective expectations of Gambians.
My expectations are too high about presidential term limit. No president should stay in power for more than 10 years.
My expectations are high for this new government. We expect it to fulfill all the promises of freedom and democracy, especially human rights. People's right to freedom of expression also should be respected. They should create more employment for the youths.
Malik Jallo is a private legal practitioner and a law lecturer at the University of the Gambia. He said most of the freedoms and call for justice cannot just come automatic. It has to follow a process which starts with amending the laws and establishing institutions.
I don't think you need a rocket scientist to actually tell you that the legal sector and other related sectors have actually suffered a lot during the course of the previous regime. Example, independence of the judiciary was routinely being flouted, was not respected to a level that we all wanted. So I think the first thing that would need to be done by this new government is to address the issue of independence and impartiality of the judiciary.
President Adama Barrow said he will embark on a complete overhaul of the government.
There was a government here for 22 years. 22 years is a long time, and we are able to change the government after 22 years. So obviously, there will be a lot of challenges to look at all the system and make a complete overhaul.
Large-scale government reform is not only time-consuming, but also expensive. So how can a government that is to serve for a transition period of 3 years and that has taken over a state with little in its coffers be able to undertake such reforms to meet the high and wide collective expectations of Gambians?
I think the task Barrow has is far much more difficult than removing Jammeh from power, the task he has now. Because what is happening is that there are so much expectations from Gambian people. And we don't take our time, there'll be a huge gap between expectations and achievements.
For VOA, this is Lamin Jahare reporting from Banjul, The Gambia.
Well, in East Africa, rights groups are praising Kenya's High Court ruling that blocks the closure of the world's largest refugee camp. Citing security reasons, the government had planned to close the massive Dadaab complex, which houses more than 300,000 people, most of them Somalis. But a judge ruled on Thursday that the order violated the Kenyan constitution and international treaties that protect refugees from being returned to a conflict zone. VOA's Laditza Hoke explains.
Dadaab is a complex of 5 UN-managed refugee camps in eastern Kenya. The first one was built 25 years ago for refugees from Somalia fleeing terrorism and famine at home. Kenya's government said it is now safe for them to return home, and it ordered the closure of the camps. Several rights groups challenged the order in court, and a High Court justice found that it violates Kenya's constitution as well as international treaties on refugees.
The decision by the government of Kenya to collectively repatriate all refugees in Dadaab refugee camp to the frontiers of their country of origin against their will violates the principle of non-refoulement.
Amnesty International, one of the groups that filed a suit, welcomed the ruling.
The revocation of Somali refugee status amounted to discrimination. The repatriation of all Somali refugees back to Somalia amounted to reform and was tantamount to collective punishment.
Some Kenyan officials claimed the sprawling camp complex near the Somalia border has been used as a recruiting ground for the terrorist group Al-Shabaab and as a base for launching attacks inside Kenya. A government spokesman said the court decision will be appealed as soon as possible.
The closure of Dadaab refugee camp has always drawn various opinions from very, very many players. But the decisions, the conditions, the situation which forced this decision after over a quarter of a century, the situation remains the same and nothing has changed. And therefore, being a government whose cardinal responsibility is first to Kenyans, we feel that this decision should be revealed, and that is why we are appealing.
Somalia elected a new president Wednesday, but it could not hold direct elections due to the terrorist threat. Parliament members cast their ballots in a heavily guarded airport hangar, deemed to be the safest place, as Al-Shabaab militants fired mortars around the capital Mogadishu. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
A U.S. federal appeals court has thrown up a major roadblock against President Donald Trump's plan to ban travelers from 7 Muslim-majority nations by refusing to reinstate the president's controversial executive order. Now, the three-judge appeals panel says the government has not shown a likelihood of success on the merits of its appeal, nor had it shown that failure to enter a stay would cause irreparable injury. But as Isabella Kokole reports, President Trump is vowing to fight the ruling to the bitter end.
The three-judge panel from the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco unanimously declined to block a lower court ruling that suspended the ban and allowed previously barred travelers to enter the United States. Shortly after the court announced its decision, President Trump tweeted, "See you in court. The security of our nation is at stake." Later, he told reporters at the White House that the court made a political decision that jeopardized national security.
We have a situation where the security of our country is at stake. And it's a very, very serious situation. So we look forward, as I just said, to seeing them in court. We're going to win the case.
At a news conference in Seattle, Bob Ferguson, the Attorney General for the state of Washington, which argued against restoring the travel ban, called the appellate court ruling a victory for the U.S. Constitution.
We are a nation of laws. Those laws apply to everybody in our country, and that includes the President of the United States.
U.S. Attorney General August Flentier argued that Trump's executive order was well within the president's power granted by Congress and the Constitution. But Washington State Solicitor General Noah Purcell said reinstating the travel ban without a full judicial review would throw the country back into chaos. The case may well end up in the Supreme Court. Isabella Cioccioli, VOA News, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We are also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. And also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, hiring help for the home just got easier in Kenya. We'll explain in a moment. Stay with us. Well, in Friday's business news, the World Bank says African cities can accelerate growth and open the doors to global markets if urbanization keeps up with the continent's explosive population growth. With more details, Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reports from the NASDAQ market site in New York.
Urbanization is the source of productivity and increased economic integration, according to the latest World Bank report. As long as African cities lack functioning land markets, regulations, and coordinated infrastructure investments, they will remain local cities, closed to regional and global markets, trapped into producing only locally traded goods and services, and limited in their economic growth. If well-managed cities can help countries accelerate growth and open the doors to global markets in two ways: one, by creating productive environments that attract international investment and increase economic efficiency, and two, by creating livable environments that prevent urban costs from rising excessively with increased desensification. Now, Africa's cities are quickly gaining in population. Urban areas contain 472 million people. That number will double over the next 25 years. The largest cities grow as fast by 4% annually. Productive jobs, affordable housing, and effective infrastructure will be urgently needed for residents and newcomers. And to attract global investment in tradables production, cities must develop scale economies, which are associated with successful urban economic development in other regions. Such scale economies can arise in Africa, and they will if city and country leaders make concerted efforts to bring agglomeration effects to urban areas. From the NASDAQ market site in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is Africa 54 Business News.
Well, thanks a lot, Jill. Now, in Kenya, most companies that offer services for the home, like nanny or cleaning services, still conduct most of their businesses over the phone. However, that may be changing. Now, two companies that ventured onto the internet are now finding most of their business online. Lenny Rovaga reports from Nairobi.
This is Kisafi, a cleaning company located in Nairobi. Today, Janet Otieno, one of the founders, is leading a strategy meeting with her staff. There are dozens of similar companies across Kenya. What makes Kisafi unique is that it gets most of its business online. The cleaning service has an app which can be downloaded from the Google Play Store. Clients can also order service through a phone call, but Kisafi gets 80% of its business through the app. According to Otieno, the market has been receptive, but challenges do exist.
The main challenge is finding the right talent. In terms of partners, the pros also, because you need people who understand the technology aspect of it, and we also need people who can provide the best quality of services.
Today, Quinta Omondi makes her way to clean a client's home. Omondi earns around $150 per month, enough to sustain her family. Customers pay about $10 per day. Job Selelia, a repeat client, has nothing but praise for the service.
I can actually leave, go about my errands, and I can come back and have the confidence that my staff is going to be safe and the quality of their work is really superb. So that's the convenience that I get.
Another company that gets its business online is Mother Goose, a professional nanny service located in Ongata Rongai, 30 kilometers outside the capital. Today, caregivers are being taken through a class on infant wellness. To request a nanny, clients go online and fill out a form on the Mother Goose website. The company then follows up with a phone call. The nannies receive orientation at the client's home before they offer their services, which cost around $10 per day. Maureen Atieno sought a nanny from Mother Goose after facing several challenges in finding a perfect fit.
The baby had so many problems here and there, but now I can go to work perfectly without being interfered with where I am, or wondering how the baby is there in the house. Yeah, I think I'm okay with her.
Analysts say Kenyan entrepreneurs can gain an advantage by using the internet to draw customers. Jim Nawaweru from Daystar University says that this new frontier has unique challenges.
Technology impacts entrepreneurs positively, by and large. That the more tech savvy you are, the higher the chances that your business will grow. That notwithstanding, we also have negatives, because there are people who use technology to do the wrong thing. Sometimes you advertise for things you don't have, or you overpromise, yet you cannot deliver.
Tech-savvy companies that show they can deliver, like Kisafi and Mother Goose, are doing just fine. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Kileleshwa and Ongata Rongai, Kenya.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, from life on a former slave plantation to becoming one of the nation's first African-American millionaires. We'll tell you our story when we come back. Well, February is Black History Month in the United States. The annual month-long national observance pays tribute to the important people and events that shape the history of African Americans. Now, viewers, Chris Simpkins introduces us to a woman who grew up on a former slave plantation, fought against discrimination, and went on to become one of the nation's first African American millionaires.
These were the famous hair care products here.
And this was the original product container from pre-World War I, so it's pretty rare to find these.
Alelia Bundles cherishes artifacts that tell stories about her great-great-grandmother, Madam C.J. Walker.
Yeah, Madam Walker really represents the American dream in its best light. She is a person whose parents had been enslaved. She was the first free child born in her family in the 1860s, and by the time she died in 1919, at 51 years of age, she had become a millionaire.
Walker became one of the 20th century's most successful self-made women entrepreneurs. After experiencing hair loss, she experimented with various treatments, inventing and eventually selling hair care products for African American women.
But what I love is that she put her own image on the packaging. Because at the time, there were other companies selling products to black women, but they would put this sort of, someone who didn't look black, and because they were really kind of exploiting the insecurities that black women felt, because of European standards of beauty.
She traveled the country building a cosmetics empire made up of women who sold and distributed her products.
So it wasn't just about hair care products, selling hair care products, styling hair. It became about economic independence. And so what I love seeing in her life is that this hair care products business became a means to an end that empowered other women, that allowed them to buy homes for their families, to educate their children.
For the last 40 years, Bundles has spent countless hours researching and writing about Walker's extraordinary life.
So women also wrote letters to her where one woman said, "You have made it possible for a black woman to make more money in a day than she could in a month working in somebody's kitchen." So this was really showing women who would have been sharecroppers and maids and laundresses how they could support their families and be their own bosses.
Bundles says Walker was passionate about activism, including empowering African American women. In 1917, she even organized a trade convention, which was one of the first national meetings of businesswomen in the country.
In her keynote speech, she said, "I want you as Walker agents to show the world that you care not just about yourself, but about others." At the end of the convention, the women sent a telegram to President Woodrow Wilson urging him to support legislation to make lynching a federal crime. She wanted them to use their power and their influence and their money to make a difference.
Madam C.J. Walker, more than a pioneer of modern hair care products. Chris Simpkins, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the morning show, Daybreak Africa, between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words.
Today's word is important in the debate about technology that hides data, even from government investigators. Encryption.
Apple and other tech companies want strong encryption to protect their customers. The FBI wants access to encrypted data to investigate serious crimes.
Encryption is a way to make digital information secure. It is meant to permit access only to those meant to receive a message or data.
But it can also prevent law officers from finding evidence of possible crimes.